And to be able to have that speech be free, it's essential that the campus have a safe environment where everyone can express freely. That requires shared rules. And that starts with the basic premise of the use of reason and dialogue, process differences, which is what free speech allows. Never the use of hatred and violence. It is not dependent on the issue or the position of the person around an issue. This is not specific to what's happening right now in Israel and Gaza, and it's not specific to the position of people. The fundamental principle is that one. You cannot allow acts of violence to deal with differences, because that actually negates free speech and makes it unsafe to speak freely.
Chancellor, the Los Angeles Times and reporter Javed Kaleem have detailed the Trump administration's settlement proposal for UCLA. It includes that fine that Zev just talked about, nearly $1.2 billion tied to allegations of anti-Semitism and civil rights violations at UCLA. The Justice Department claiming the university failed to protect Jewish students from those on campus who directed their anger at Israel against their fellow students. So first, to what extent do you think that UCLA did fail its Jewish students and was not sufficiently vigilant for the rights and protections for Jewish students?
Well, let me first start by acknowledging that we are going through a period of unprecedented challenges for higher education. Universities have a long history of dealing with crisis, but I think what we're seeing nowadays is something that none of us have seen during our lifetimes. Unfortunately, universities have been caught up in the general climate of polarization that characterizes our society in general. And I think it's going to take a very deliberate and concerted effort to move from polarization to pluralism, except that there's a diversity of viewpoints. And part of the most important contributions that a university does to a society is to serve as an exemplary institution and set an example of how we can process differences through the use of reason and dialogue, and never through the use of hatred and violence. That's my overall goal joining this great institution, now 106 years old. I do think that we need to acknowledge that there's been a rise in anti-Semitism in American universities and in society in general, and that part of that definitely affected what happened here at UCLA. Just before we got these findings from the Department of Justice, starting with the anti-Semitism as a result of an investigation, we had actually settled a lawsuit that was won by several Jewish students and a faculty member, acknowledging the reason we had settled was that we acknowledged that there had been some failures in the way we had responded or on the way we had to protect our Jewish students. Now, the issue we have right now is that the events that we're talking about happened a year and a half ago, happened between the end of April and the first days of May of 2024. Even before I arrived here during the summer 24, the University of California system revised its policies on time, place, and manner for public expression and reaffirmed its absolute policy to ban any form of discrimination, including, of course, anti-Semitism.
Hi, I'm Pat Morrison, one of the hosts of America at a Crossroads. If you like this video, don't just watch. Head over to our website where you can subscribe for early access to new programs, see our upcoming schedules, and connect directly with our guests in our weekly live streams. Thank you for watching.
So I have created a UCLA initiative to combat anti-Semitism, to implement the three main recommendations of that task force. One is to greatly increase our educational activities. Second, to facilitate the reporting of incidents. And for example, we are about to announce the recruitment of a Title VI officer. For the audience, that's the Title VI and Title VII in the Civil Rights Code that deal with issues of discrimination. And then finally, to have a clear and very strict enforcement of the rules. Very importantly, as a result of an act of violence against one of the UC regions where it's here in LA, I suspended Students for Justice in Palestine, both the undergraduate and the graduate branches of that organization, because those were the people who had instigated that attack on the personal property of one of our regions. It could have been anyone. We could have acted the same way. It was not because it was a regime, it was because it was an act of violence. And every time there's an act of violence, that violates the fundamental principle of universities, which is no violence, dialogue. We have started a series building on a whole series of dialogues across different part of our initiative for the study of hate, to try to neutralize expressions of hate. And during these few months that I've been here, there have been 3 attempts for all by Students for Justice in Palestine to stage demonstrations. We have acted swiftly and avoided any demonstration during this month. We haven't had a single incident with our Jewish students.
Chancellor Frenk, of course, there are some members of the UCLA community that are concerned that the pendulum is going to swing too far in the opposite direction, and that the opportunity to criticize Israel's policies, to hold demonstrations, to raise attention for the cause of the Palestinian people or other causes the students want to support that's highly controversial in the community, that they would be kept from doing that. So what do you say to those who are concerned that this could lead to an infringement on free speech on campus?
We are defenders of free speech. Free speech is the essence of life in the university.
Because of the holidays, next week it's a different time for the program. It's Tuesday morning, September 30th, 30 years since Oslo. Why did the Accords fail? And can the Israeli-Palestinian peace process be salvaged? Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, former Palestinian Authority Minister of Foreign Affairs Nasser al-Kidwa will weigh in, along with UCLA Professor Stephen E. Zipperstein and UC Berkeley Professor Kenneth Bamberger.